The Lunar New Year holiday this year spans 8 days, starting from February 10th. Businesses across Japan are anxiously awaiting the influx of Chinese tourists renowned for their extravagant spending. However, a glance around major attractions reveals a different reality. The majority of Asian tourists are from Hong Kong and Taiwan. According to a video shared by a skiing enthusiast,
The world has changed. What used to strike us most about visiting Japan? First, the abundance of Chinese tourists. Practically everywhere you'd go, you'd find Chinese menus in restaurants. But now if you look at Hokkaido, for instance, in skiing areas, you'll see that 90% are foreigners, with only 10% being Asian faces.
Furthermore, Japanese media points out that the demand for flights between China and Japan is minimal, with only about 800 flights per week, roughly 60% of pre-pandemic levels. The Lunar New Year promotion at Canal City Hakata, a well-known shopping center in Fukuoka, started on February 9th, offering dining vouchers for purchases exceeding 10,000 Japanese yen, approximately $67. However, the majority of those claiming the vouchers were Korean, not Chinese. Observers have commented on this phenomenon, suggesting it's somewhat peculiar given the typical habits of Chinese tourists. What could be the reason behind the sudden decrease in their numbers? Firstly, Takao Yoshi, the president of a travel agency specializing in Chinese tourism, suggests that perhaps Chinese travelers have opted to visit countries like Thailand and Singapore, which offer visa-free entry. This speculation seems to have some basis. In January 2023, the Chinese government finally relaxed stringent COVID-19 prevention measures, allowing its citizens to travel abroad. In September 2023, Prime Minister Seta Thavisin announced that Thailand would implement a visa-free system for Chinese tourists. Thailand anticipated a rapid recovery in its tourism industry, estimating that by the end of the year, the number of Chinese tourists could reach as high as 5 million, reclaiming a significant portion of the clientele lost during the pandemic. On September 25th, the day the policy took effect, the Thai Prime Minister and other government officials even went to the airport to welcome the first batch of Chinese tourists arriving in Thailand. However, things didn't unfold as expected. Surveys indicate that even in countries offering visa-free entry, there hasn't been a significant influx of Chinese tourists. Data shows that in the first 9 months of 2023, the number of Chinese tourists visiting Thailand was less than 2.5 million. Nuta Liang Gurankit, a Chinese-speaking guide who has worked at the Grand Palace in Bangkok for 42 years, states that the notion of a rapid recovery in tourist numbers post-pandemic is highly unrealistic. If things were normal as before the pandemic, the place would be packed with people. Therefore, the notion of Chinese travelers opting for other visa-free countries isn't the primary reason behind their reduced outbound travel. So what's the main reason? Some experts believe it's simply because Chinese people lack the funds. Analyst Hideyuki Araki from Razona Research Institute explains, the Chinese economy is struggling, causing the middle class, who used to love traveling to Japan, to be unable to afford outbound trips. They might have switched to relatively cheaper domestic travel within China. Indeed, reports indicate that some upper and middle class in China are facing what can only be described as an economic crisis, potentially even bankruptcy. On January 5, 2024, a Beijing court accepted the bankruptcy filing of the Zhongzhi Enterprise Group, which controlled assets worth trillions of yuan. Established in 1995 and headquartered in Beijing, the Zhongzhi Group boasted over 1,500 subsidiaries, including 4 major wealth management companies that had already collapsed. The main businesses of Zhongzhi Group included asset management, financial services, and wealth management, spanning various sectors such as trusts, insurance, real estate, education, technology, and new energy. In summary, the asset scale of the Zhongzhi Group exceeded that of China's largest private real estate enterprise, Evergrande Group. Chinese media reported that through its subsidiaries, Zhongzhi Group controlled, invested in, and managed assets worth 3.6 trillion yuan, approximately $500 billion US. However, influenced by the bursting of the Chinese real estate bubble, Zhongzhi Group declared bankruptcy on November 22, 2023, due to an inability to repay maturing debts. Simultaneously, the bankruptcy of Zhongzhi Group left its affluent investors empty-handed. According to reports from Reuters, Caixin, and other media, Zhongzhi Group's collapse affected at least a dozen listed companies, involving creditors, including both corporate entities and individual investors, with debts totaling up to 230 billion yuan, approximately $32 billion US dollars. Many among them never anticipated such high threshold investments to end in bankruptcy, let alone their funds dissipating as swiftly as those of ordinary people. Moreover, the bursting of the Chinese real estate bubble has also harmed the middle class. Buyers of unfinished properties have lost their life savings. Developers abandoning building projects have driven many buyers into a corner. Sharp declines in property prices have further deprived numerous middle-class families of their primary source of wealth. Ms. Xu, who works at a state-owned airline company in Beijing, used to enjoy a comfortable income, spent lavishly on entertainment, frequently traveled abroad, and often spent hundreds of yuan on private gatherings. However, since the pandemic, consumer spending among Chinese people has generally weakened, leaving Ms. Xu herself facing financial instability. She now harbors uncertainties about her future employment and income prospects. Consequently, while her lifestyle isn't exactly impoverished, she's becoming less casual about overseas travel, and even dining out now involves budget considerations. Ms. Xu also noted that since last year, many of her Gen Z peers have experienced income reductions. Those burdened with mortgages have even less disposable income at hand. Consequently, they have started opting for cheaper substitutes. She remarked that a few years ago, Beijing saw its fair share of young people pursuing what they called refined poverty, which is to buy luxury goods and exclusively wear branded clothing, despite living in abysmal housing conditions. However, there seem to be fewer of these individuals nowadays. With the economic condition of the middle class worsening, the situation is even more dire for unemployed college graduates and the lower class. Although Chinese people are more enthusiastic about traveling before the pandemic, and impromptu trips inspired by social media are prevalent, they are more frugal than before. According to statistics, tourism in 21 provinces and regions of China have either recovered or surpassed 2019 levels. However, tourism revenue has not kept pace. Only 15 provinces have seen tourism revenue recover to or surpass 2019 levels. The Chinese financial magazine Yi Cai reported that one of the popular terms in 2023 was special forces tourism. It is an excellent example of Chinese people downgrading their consumption. Young people, mainly university students, generally try to spend the least amount of money and visit the most attractions in the shortest time. They stay overnight on trains, in hostels, or in budget hotels, rely on public transportation as much as possible, visit mostly free attractions, and avoid shopping. Their pursuit is to travel across half of China for less than 1,000 yuan, approximately $140. According to the 2023 Workplace Consumer Trends Report released by the Chinese recruitment service platform Zhaopin, although 85% of the workforce has traveled or plans to travel, 42% of them only plan for local trips, with budgets generally under 2,000 yuan, and many consider going to parks as zero-budget travel. The financial social media account Mars Observer pointed out that the average travel consumption this year is no better than 4 years ago, indicating that pandemic lockdowns have significantly reduced Chinese people's consumption capacity. While this budget travel trend is gaining popularity, many complain on social media that transportation and accommodation have gotten expensive. In response, some experts stated that both the rich and the poor are influencing the decrease in per capita consumption. The per capita travel consumption in 25 provinces, where data for 2023 has been released, is approximately 1,209 yuan, about $168. For example, before the pandemic, during the May Day holiday in 2019, per capita consumption exceeded 600 yuan, about $83, but during the May Day holiday in 2023, per capita consumption was 488 yuan, about $68, only 80% of the pre-pandemic level. Another report from Swiss bank UBS and its subsidiary Credit Suisse shows that the wealthiest 1% of China's population currently holds over 31% of the country's wealth. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens and micro-enterprises are struggling with economic decline. Therefore, for ordinary people, if they spend this money on eating, buying houses, getting married, and raising children, the pressure will be immense, and if they spend it on luxury goods, clothing, bags, and travel, even less can they make ends meet. Therefore, this trend of consumption downgrade is inevitable. A report from Skift Research revealed that while aviation capacity in China has fully recovered, international flight capacity is still less than half of pre-pandemic levels, with nearly 5 million fewer seats available. Of course, the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, is well aware of the situation. Although the CCP has not disclosed China's economic woes, they have been quietly boosting the economy, attempting to salvage it through cultural tourism. Cities like Zibo and Harbin, which suddenly gained popularity after the pandemic, are prime examples of the strategy. After the pandemic, the busiest departments across China were those related to cultural tourism. In 2023, Zibo barbecue became popular nationwide, with the city of 4.7 million inhabitants welcoming 4.8 million tourists in March 2023. According to data from a mapping service company, high-speed train tickets from Beijing to Zibo sold out within a minute. The local government even arranged 21 buses to transport tourists directly from the train station to the barbecue restaurants. They hosted a barbecue festival in a massive seafood market, the only place capable of accommodating 10,000 people. In 2024, the northeast city of Harbin entered the national and even global spotlight, continuously making headlines and being hailed as the top destination of 2024. Many visitors who traveled to Harbin were amazed by the affordability of local tourism, the well-coordinated planning by the government, and the friendly attitude of the service industry, which diverged significantly from the stereotype of the Northeast. However, observers noted that this cultural tourism trend was more akin to a nationwide movement, with the government leading the charge to eradicate price gouging practices and even turning hospitality into a performative art. In the current economic downturn, although tourism hasn't rapidly increased GDP, it has immediately boosted employment in certain industries. Some commentators pointed out that local governments' efforts contributed to this cultural tourism. Mired in debt crises and sluggish economic development, local authorities were banking on the influx of tourists and cash flow to revive their economies. One prominent feature of this wave of tourism is the accompanying governance transformation in many places. But can the cultural tourism industry really improve China's economic situation? Experts believe that for such a vast country as China, tourism's role in driving economic growth is limited. For instance, in Zibo, the year-on-year growth of the service sector in the first 3 quarters of 2023 still lagged behind the national average. Moreover, in most major cities, the majority of tourism revenue is actually generated by locals. While developing the cultural tourism industry to attract more investment may be a viable approach during economic upturns, it's challenging in a downturn. Many localities in China have accumulated massive debts due to blind construction under the guise of developing cultural tourism. What's more concerning is that the various risks and problems plaguing China's economy in 2023 will worsen in 2024. If more industries slump and more people lose their jobs, will people be able to travel at all, even on a budget? Moreover, apart from economic reasons, another factor preventing people from traveling abroad, especially to Japan, is political. In 2023, almost everyone expected Chinese to revenge travel after 3 years of lockdowns. Consequently, in August, China opened up tour groups to Japan. However, in the same month, the Japanese government announced that starting on August 24th, it would discharge contaminated water from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant into the sea. It's worth noting that before announcing this decision, the Japanese government had already obtained approval from international organizations. After evaluating the risks for about 2 years since 2021, the International Atomic Energy Agency had approved Japan's discharge plan in early July 2023, concluding that the radiation impact on humans and the environment was negligible. However, to divert attention from international crises, the CCP spun the nuclear waste discharge to fan anti-Japanese sentiment. Additionally, given the internet firewall, many Chinese people couldn't see the true information about the nuclear waste discharge. As a result, they unanimously criticized Japan. Meanwhile, travel agencies also avoided launching travel itineraries related to Japan. On August 27th, journalists found that although Japanese tourism products were still being sold on online platforms like Trip.com, ly.com, and Tuniu, some platforms no longer display Japanese-related products on their homepage. Moreover, many tourism industry insiders revealed that some customers had started to cancel their tours. Subsequently, data showed that as of December last year, the number of Chinese tourists to Japan was only 310,000, less than half of the pre-pandemic level. Observers believe that the CCP's emotional manipulation has indeed influenced the interest of Chinese people traveling to Japan, but this is just one of the reasons. Li Junchang, director of the Research Center of Environmental Trace Toxic Substances at National Cheng Kung University in Taiwan, explained that the only countries and regions globally opposed to Japan's discharge of nuclear waste are China, Hong Kong, and Macau. This indicates that other countries consider the radiation risk of Japan's discharge plan acceptable, especially since China's nuclear power plants also discharge waste into coastal areas, with an annual discharge volume even higher than Japan's. Therefore, experts believe that the strict ban imposed by the CCP government is likely motivated by political factors rather than health risks.